morning. This is Jim Hennager. It's December 22nd. This is the Table Talk, and with the new Independent Party. Today I'd like to get into some more macro-sized solutions. The last couple videos have involved the creation of a mass transit system, international transit system, underground in tubes that would allow people to travel at speeds of 100, 200, maybe up to 600 miles an hour. It would allow for the movement of natural gas and oil products, as well as fresh water and ocean water, seawater, in the bottom of the tube. So tremendous advantages to every country that would be involved in it. Some trade-offs on what we would like to see countries develop as far as social justice and technology and equal rights for everyone. And along with this developing mass transit system would be the opportunity to develop maybe 25,000 new communities. And we think that that's a very appropriate way to move in the future, so that as many as 5 billion people can be in these communities, have security, safety, food, water, healthcare, education. All of these things are a part of that package, and it would raise the equity level of the bottom people up, and it would give a middle class a very strong security for thousands of years. Okay, so we're looking at solutions that are not just short-term, but long-term. Even in the building materials, we would like to see housing and structures that can last several thousand years, if that's possible. So today I'd like to get into an area where I think we need to concentrate some efforts in the fields of space, earth, and ocean water technologies. And we have those kinds of things. There's many universities, a lot of professors, students involved in these kinds of efforts. But what's happening is that they're not internationally coordinated. And this gets back to that exceptionalism problem that I've been into, where we have a situation where for the most part, the Russians have developed a space station. A number of countries have had astronauts up there, including ours. Some of ours are up there right now. But then when the Chinese asked to use it, it was the United States that denied it. So now we have a situation where the Russians have declared that they're going to have a space colony on the moon, and you can kind of imagine that will spur the United States to want to have a colony on the moon, and then maybe India and maybe the European space people want to have one there. So you can envision a future where you might have 4 or 5 colonies on the moon, and every time this has come up with my students, it ends up being that they have to arm them and they go to war against each other. That's height of stupidity, in my opinion. And if we're headed in that direction, we need to put the brakes on. We need to rethink what's going on here on Earth and set some different priorities. If you look at it from, say, a potential civilization that might be more advanced than ours, say they're a level 6 or level 7 civilization, and if they were to look at this kind of development where we'd have 4 or 5 different nations with colonies on the moon and the same thing on Mars, and then they go to war against each other, they would, if they were giving us a report card, I think they would failed. It would be an easy thing for them to decide we're not going to want these people out in space. They don't deserve it. Okay, so I'm of the firm opinion that we don't get our head together and start working together and cooperating, that we've lost this, this race to develop into the future, and it may happen to us faster than we want to. It only makes sense that if we can work together and use the talents of people from many countries, use the resources of many countries, and work together so that we have one colony on the moon someday, we have one colony on Mars, we might have one colony on Europa or Titan or Pluto someday. And when we have the ability to go out into space farther than our own solar system, we'll be going as one nation, one civilization. If we can't do that, we have big problems, okay? Well, in the area of space, I've always been interested in space. I think the investments we've made in space programs, particularly on the peaceful side, have been well worth it. It's developed a whole host of technologies that have been able to apply to medicine and to manufacturing and to understanding sustainability. All those things are good investments, and I would like to see those continue. I think in the future the kind of science that would come out of space exploration would give us a lot of insights into not only the universe and our own galaxy and our own solar system, but also in some of the physics, astrophysics kinds of phenomena that we really don't know much about, and that includes understanding things like string theory and astrophysics in the most minute forms, where life comes from, where energies come from. And I'm of the opinion that there are more advanced forms of energy that we need to develop. We need to understand. The astrophysicists, when they look at the levels of civilization, they look at it different than my levels. If you saw that video, I kind of pegged the human race here on Earth at a top of level 5 civilization, with 4 levels below, and then the very good possibility that there's 4 or 5 levels above us. But an astrophysicist, an astronomer, when they look at levels, they probably are looking at how a civilization uses energy. And in some cases what they would see is a level 1 civilization using energy from, say, wood. They collect wood, it's easily available if it is close to them, and that's where they get their heat and light and that from. A level 2 would use things like coal that they have to dig for and process and use. And to be honest, we're really kind of at that level. I see where maybe 2,500 new coal plants are being proposed in the next 10 years. So we really haven't gone past that level too far. The third level would be where you're able to develop energy from using atoms, nuclear energy, hydrogen, that kind of energy. And we have those, and there's proposals to develop more nuclear energy plants. And of course it's related to nuclear energy, related to weapons, and so there's a lot of controversy to that level. But if you move to a level 4 civilization, they have figured out how to basically capture the energy off of a solar system like our sun. And it's not just solar panels, it's actually being able to harness the hydrogen kind of energy, electromagnetic energy coming off of the sun. And we really haven't even touched that. There's some storylines where not too long ago it was thought that the huge spaceship was attaching itself to our sun, and it looked like they were drawing energy off of our sun. We're not there yet. we can only, dream about that kind of energy. But it's there, and that would be level 4. A level 5 energy civilization would be able to pick up on the energy in our galaxy. We're just coming into the realization that there's energies flowing between solar systems, between stars, even between planets. There's some kind of energy that's flowing there, cosmic energy or whatever you would call it, and we have no clue on what that is, other than to think about it. So that would be a level 5, that they can take energy from many stars from within their galaxy. And the next level, level 6, would be one that can go out and capture the energy from a number of galaxies. It was astounding to me to see a NASA depiction of the energy flows between galaxies, and the fact that galaxies are in clusters. We're in a cluster of 5 different galaxies, and these galaxies somehow are connected, and this energy field flows between them. And when we get to that level, we might understand how to move from star to star to galaxy to galaxy very, very fast. There must be sort of portals or stargates or something between stars and galaxies that supposedly are beyond us. Okay, so that's the area that I'd like to see researched. The fact that we're still using 1950s, 1940s technology in our rockets, solid fuel, rocket fuel, that doesn't make any sense. Why put all of that energy into a big rocket that every once in a while explodes? We've seen that happen, and not just in our country. So it would seem like we're using technology that's 70, 80 years old, and we need to move into new discoveries. And to do that, I think we have to make a concerted effort, and not just the United States or Russia or China doing it. I see no reason why we can't develop space educational centers. And maybe we'd have, a main center here in the United States, a main one in Europe, a main one in Russia, a main one in China, a main one in India, maybe a main one in Africa, and a main one in South America. And then have feeding institutions off of that, so that you could get a major in space design or space living or social biology, space biology, and in a smaller university, and then feed into larger ones. And maybe it's going to be in Houston, but there's some problems being that close to the ocean. So I think we need to develop a space center, education center, somewhere in our interior. Now, we saw a movement in the 80s where about half of NASA moved to the Colorado Mountains. I may touch on that a little bit later, but it appears that it was mostly military aspects of NASA, which has dominated. They don't talk about it, but almost all of the funding that's gone into NASA has gone on the military side. Most of the satellites that they've put up there are surveillance and the kind of technology used to defend our country, and maybe even aggressive kinds of technologies up there. We're not the only ones. But my point is that by having a learning center concept where all these technologies can be worked on and then connected internationally, so that students can move between the Space Center here and the Space Center in Europe and the Space Center in China, and all of our efforts go into projects that we work together, and we take credit together, and we accomplish together. Okay? Now, what I'm seeing is a problem in the funding. When when a nation gets into financial trouble, that they have to back off of this area of funding. And so I think it would be very worthwhile to develop public-private partnerships in this area so that you could invite hundreds and hundreds of technical companies that would have an interest in not just the space part of it, but also the related technologies, to be involved in a incubator system around these universities that are connected to space learning. And in that, they could invest some of their money and work together. Now that's a problem because we have laws on the book that basically don't allow companies to work together and share technology, and I think that's stupid. I think we ought to be able to have centers of education, centers of learning, centers of technological advancement, where these companies can come together and they not only share technology and work together, but they share the patents, they share the royalties from these developments, and share them with the universities. There's no reason why the university can't benefit, but what I'm seeing are universities. I can give you an example. One of my companies developed a design for an urban windmill, electric generation. It was a new design. I took it to a nearby university. Their engineering aerodynamics professor took a look at it, ran it on his computer, and came back with the statement that the technology would work like it's designed to. But if I wanted to participate in their program to run some tests or to even use their wind tunnel, all of a sudden my technology would become their technology and the patents would be theirs. They have a whole collection of patents, maybe 2,000 patents that have developed this way, where they've been working with people off campus, and then they claim the rights to it. And that doesn't work for me. It didn't work for me. I haven't had any association with the university since then. It looked to me like they were trying to take advantage of the situation. And you have to be careful taking new technologies to universities. As I found out on another project, when the university professors got excited about it, they quickly brought in special interests that they knew about and basically tried to steal it. So we have a problem with having companies come together and work in an environment where they can cooperate and legally be able to help each other to bring forward new technologies. And I don't see any reason why that can't happen so that everybody benefits. It's a win-win. It's certainly a non-zero-sum strategy for advancing companies to be able to work together. And I think then they can transfer those technologies to the public, okay? And I don't think that governments have to invest all that much money. I think they can give tax incentives. If these companies were working in mutual cooperative ways, maybe you can give them 5 years or 10 years without corporate taxes as an advantage, or maybe some kind of advantage on their taxes to reimburse them for the costs that they invest. There's got to be ways to be able to do this in the technology field, and this is just one area. So I could see that we have a whole network of space design, space issue learning centers all over the world. And one of the things that these cooperating companies could do is hire the students. There's no reason that we are asking students to take out loans of $50, $70, $100, $150,000 and then expect them to be able to pay those off in their future. We're ruining the future of young people by having that kind of a system, particularly here in the United States. I see that it's very possible to have these companies hire these young students and have them involved in a work setting, a work experience situation, work and learning at the same time, and it gives the company a very good head start on possibly hiring that student after they've graduated. And I don't think the student should have any cost to have to pay back. That just makes sense. But we have another problem with that. I brought it up to the local university that we had high-tech companies that were interested in that kind of, student cooperative learning situation. But the university would have to move to a system of offering classes so that this could happen. Typically in a university, they have hundreds and thousands of classes, and they just spread them out all over the morning and afternoon and evening and weekends. And it's not really very easy for a student to pick up a schedule where they can work the mornings and go to school in the afternoon, or vice versa. And when I took it to the dean of the university and I mentioned that, if you could just design your classes to have morning classes or afternoon classes so that students could work, even if it was working at a local restaurant in the evenings or part of the day, that would give them a chance to get employment and not have to borrow so much money. They wouldn't do it. The bottom line, they're not going to change their program or how they offer classes. That's ridiculous. I think the universities, particularly the ones I'm thinking about, if they're new, there's no reason why they can't schedule their classes so that you could have 4-hour shifts of classes just like you have 4 or 6-hour shifts working. And there's other problems there. I've had experience where students are not the most reliable. They get involved, they get excited, and then they lose interest, or finals come up and they disappear. So students have some things to do on their side to prove that they're responsible and that they can be trusted with the work environment, but also the technology. I've had students get into a long discussion, and I kind of get the feeling that they're trying to pump me for more and more information, and the next day I see it for sale on Google or someplace, So there's a lot of those kind of formality things that need to be taken into account. And I think you need to have agreements by the students and the companies that if they're sharing technical information, proprietary information, that is done, in a no-compete, no-disclose kind of fashion. But then when it's being shared and they're being worked on it, there's an agreement to that and how that's going to work out, so that we don't get 5 years down the road and have lawsuits and people getting mad at each other and all of that. I think those things can be worked out. It's just a matter of relating and declaring those relationships in a specific way and in writing, and everybody agrees to them. That seems like a very mature way to handle it, and I don't see why it can't be done. Now we have universities, and they have these cooperative kinds of things going on with companies. They're called different kinds of things at different places, but they vary greatly from university to university. The local one might have a couple dozen people in their incubator, and some of them are pretty large companies. I remember reading that they might employ 800 people, but I know of another incubator system for a university in Colorado, and they have employee that come up to 10,000, and hundreds of companies. So what I'm seeing is an opportunity to bring the corporate technical world to the educational world, and they have to get along. And I could see that professors could go back and forth. It would be good for more professors to be in the real world and go back and forth. So that makes a lot of sense. I think it could be private, public kind of financing, and everybody would benefit. This is the area of space, and I think we need to be developing those technologies, and we need those kinds of energies. We need to understand what other dimensions are all about, and we're only going to do that when we concentrate those efforts. The second area that we need to get into is understanding our own Earth, and there's a number of ways that we need to look at this. Certainly the area of global warming and what our atmosphere is doing, and what what's happening to us underneath. Uh, the more reading I'm getting into, and I suggested in my talks about global warming that we might have a number of underwater volcanoes going off. It now appears that more and more people are wondering if maybe there isn't something going on with the molten lava and that subterranean kind of world there, and it may be heating up. So that's concerning to me that governments are not talking about it, they're not revealing that information, and that's why we have so much confusion about the weather patterns and what's going on in our oceans. And they're blaming the wrong thing, it comes down to. They're trying to displace, potential fears of something that could be catastrophic, and trying to blame it on, coal burning as a way to make money with this cap and trade kind of strategies, which I don't agree with at all. But I'm saying that we don't know much about our Earth. We don't know much about 100 feet below our Earth. If we were going to develop this Peace Highway, we'd have to know a lot more about what's under our feet, and we just do not. We have schools that are into mining and those kinds of enterprises, but we just don't have a lot of emphasis in geography, geology, as it relates to what's happening underneath. And I think we need to know that. We even need to develop new technologies. Some of the deepest wells for oil are maybe a couple miles, and I think the Russians have a deeper well than that. But we need to have technology that can go down hundreds of miles. We have a situation under our Yellowstone National Park, which at one time, many times, has been a huge volcano. It's probably one of the largest volcanic areas on Earth, and if it were to explode again, it would basically destroy all of the United States, and it probably would put us back into an ice age. And it has to do with two magma chambers underneath each other below, and they're miles and miles down there, and they're just building up pressure, and that pressure is going to explode someday, and maybe in our near future. It's raising the Yellowstone Lake and the surrounding land by over a foot in the last 20 years or so. So something's about to happen. We need the technology to bore a hole down in there and release the pressure. That sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but that's something that we need to do. If we're going to be managers of our own Earth, we have to understand it, and that's just one example. We've also got to get into the whole area of pollution and recycling. I read a story about a 17-year-old that came up with a plan to help clean some of the trash out of the oceans. That makes a lot of sense. If a 17-year-old can come up with that, why can't a whole university come up with it? And I'm reading that we have nations still dumping their garbage into the ocean. Some of our own are taking it out on garbage and just dumping it. That doesn't make any sense. We have nations where the sewage is running into the ocean, and we have that in our streams. Right here in Iowa, we have a situation where the Department of Environment has identified at least 1,400 sites on our rivers where there's a known pollutant going into it. A lot of that pollution is coming from confinement centers on farms, but some of it is coming from industrial plants. And what has the state government done? In all of their wisdom, they declared that the public can't have notice of that. It's a crime to have somebody put a sign up where one of these 1,400 sites might be. They're called environmental terrorists. That's going in the wrong direction, it appears to me, and it's coming from the pressure brought on them by the chemical companies that are behind the confinement and behind the fertilizer contaminants and behind some of the companies that are polluting our streams. We have now some of the most polluted streams in the nation, and that's ridiculous because we have some very nice rivers and streams. There's no reason for that, So again, we need some new technology to help in that recycling. And it's my opinion that we're just missing the whole scene on recycling. We should be recycling 100% of our garbage. And if we need to take and build new prisons so that inmates can be involved in this recycling, that makes sense. I brought that up. When I ran for governor in '98, I proposed that we build 6 new prisons in Iowa and have the inmates recycle 100% of our garbage. We have a tremendous problem here in Iowa with landfills. I think all of the landfills are full. We're actually hauling by truck garbage to Wisconsin and Minnesota, and I don't know what they're doing with it, but it's not a good idea. So our landfills are a problem, and it's because we have so much waste. We need to have strategies to recycle that and use it. Now, Ames here has a recycling plant where they bring the garbage in and grind it up and burn it for electricity, but they're producing some pollution, and it's affecting lakes in the middle of Canada. So we need new technologies. We need to have ways that you can burn coal and do it safely. We need to have technologies that can help with our atmosphere. If we have carbon pollution, we need to be able to identify ways to deal with that. And we can't just say, well, we're okay for another 10 years or another 20 years. That's ridiculous. We have to get on it now. And again, we can have public-private kind of sharing of this investments so that everybody wins. I think we need to know a lot more about our Earth probably before we take off to the moon or Mars. It makes sense to understand our own planet a lot better than we do. And that goes into the third area of our oceans. In many ways, there are probably more natural resources at the bottom of our oceans than we're aware of, that we're even assuming. We need to develop strategies instead of having platforms right on the top of the water. We need to be able to take and build colonies and work sites at the bottom and have mining operations at the bottom and bring up these minerals and these raw resources that make more sense than, say, going to an asteroid and bringing them back when they're right there at the bottom of our own oceans. We just don't know very much about our oceans. I believe we probably map pretty much most of the oceans, but we don't know much about it, what's down there. We need to know that. So we have space, we have Earth, we have oceans and water. We're at a point where there's a shortage of clean water for drinking, and we have to develop some new technologies to recycle the waters that we're using, gray water kind of strategies. And we're not doing very well in any of this area. So I see tremendous challenges. I see university settings for earth sciences. I see for recycling. I see university opportunities for oceans far beyond what we're doing today. And those all make some sense to me. And I'm wondering, why haven't we done it, And to do it cooperatively with other nations, that only makes sense, okay? So I'm arguing that here are some huge areas to invest in, and the companies that are now very technically savvy, those would be the same kind of companies that are making profits from wars. Why have them concentrate those efforts in those? Because there's other areas that we could have them involved in helping out all of humanity, all of the earth at the same time. where investing in wars does just the opposite. Now, I know the answer to this. It's simple politics, that countries can get more money out of their governments to go to war when they've created a scenario where they think they're being attacked, or they think that there's, an enemy out there. They can get money, even money they don't have, but to go to, Congress and argue for money to, put a colony on the moon, oh, you can't do that, So there's politics in this, and I understand that. What we need to do is develop strategies where you can have some partnerships with these same companies and get them involved in making a lot of money in the future in peaceful ways. Why can't we do that? We can do better than what we're doing today, okay? Hang in there with me. Those are 3 today. I have more in other areas that I'd like to bring to you, but I would like you to participate with me. I have students that have come up with some very interesting technologies and ways that we could improve our earth, improve our education systems, improve our daily life, and we need to do those things, okay? We can do better. I'd like to do them with you, okay? Thank you.